My best friend said he never saw me as wifey material, but now that I'm engaged to his friend, he just said he loves me. For some context, I, 27F, met my best friend, Trevor, 39M, and my fiancé, Burke, 44M, almost 5 years ago when I was 22, and they were 34 and 40 respectively. Also, I know that this sub has a huge issue with large age gaps, so I would like to point out that the age gap between my fiancé and me is not the center of this post. Anyway, they both work together, and for privacy purposes, I'm keeping their occupation a secret, but I met Burke first, and we became good friends, and then I met Trevor next. I was immediately infatuated with Trevor. He and I spoke quite a bit, went out on a few dates, and I thought he felt the same way about me. However, one day he dropped news on me where he basically told me he never felt anything for me other than friendship and didn't want to lead me on anymore. I played it cool and pretended that I too only wanted friendship. He laughed and said, "Great, glad we're on the same page." I was bitter and spiteful at first, but eventually, I got over it, and Trevor and I became best friends. Instead of avoiding him and cutting him out, my pride got in the way, and I didn't want to appear upset, so I carried on like nothing happened. I have zero feelings for Trevor now. We're much better off being friends than lovers anyway. Before, I only ever saw Burke when he was at work, and he and I had a running joke where I owed him a date. He gave me a lift home one day because it was raining, and he said, "Now you owe me dinner." After joking around about it for a few years, one day I said, "The heck with it, Burke, let's go get dinner." So we went out as friends, had a good time, and kept hanging out afterwards, going out for coffee, dinner, and to the beach. After a few months of hanging out, I developed feelings for him, and apparently, he also had feelings for me. One evening, after a Game of Thrones marathon, we ended up doing the deed. Burke and I slept together for a few months, and we weren't sure if our feelings were because of the bedroom action or if we really did like each other. So, we stopped with the smashing, but the feelings never left. We just decided to start dating, and it's been pretty great ever since. We've had minimal problems, and the ones we have had were easily resolved. Burke and I have been together for 2.5 years, living together for half of that, and engaged for almost a year. We're getting married in a month. Burke and Trevor have grown a bit closer since Burke and I got together, and Trevor is even going to be one of Burke's groomsmen in the wedding. I thought everything was perfect, and we were all one big happy family. Which brings me to now. Trevor and I went out for a walk last night, and before we parted ways, he told me he's in love with me. He explained that back then when we first met, he didn't feel it at the time, but as I've gotten older and matured, he suddenly realized that he made a mistake and thinks we are indeed compatible. He believes I became the kind of woman he wants to date. However, when he realized this, Burke and I had already announced our relationship to the world. I told Trevor that this was the worst timing. "I can't believe he did this to me. I'm getting married in a month, and this is totally messed up." He apologized, saying he had to let his feelings be known now before I get married. He also said he hopes that some part of me still wants him. Then, he told me to take some time to process this and let him know my decision later on in the week. What do you mean my decision? I still love Burke, he's the man I'm going to marry. All my feelings for Trevor left years ago as soon as I realized he was leading me on and never felt anything for me. I don't know what I'm going to do, this is going to change everything. Trevor and I will no longer be friends, our wedding is going to be one man short. Not to mention, Burke and Trevor still work together, and they have to interact quite a bit at work, and this is going to be such a mess. Part of me also feels like this is Trevor continuing to mess around with my head. He didn't want me back then, so I moved on, and now that I'm getting married, he wants what he can't have. I have to tell my soon-to-be husband, but I don't know when or how. Like, when he comes home from work, do I just blurt it out? I know that this is going to cause a pretty big awkward mess, and I want to sort this out with as minimal damage as possible. Burke worked late last night, so when he came home, I had already finished bawling my eyes out and was fast asleep. When he woke up this morning, I had already left for work. It's 12 p.m. here where I live, and Burke will be home at 7 p.m., leaving me 7 hours to work this out in my head. I'm just so stressed out right now, I just lost my best friend, there's no way Trevor and I can continue hanging out anymore. Update 1. First, I spoke to Burke that night. He came home from work, and before he got too comfy, I told him we needed to talk, and then we sat down and spoke. I started by telling him about the start of mine and Trevor's relationship because he didn't know how our friendship began. I then told him about how Trevor confessed to being in love with me and how I have zero feelings for him. I love Burke and only Burke, and he's the man I'm going to marry. Burke didn't look too surprised. He said he had a feeling that something like this was going to happen because every time Trevor, Burke, and I are in the same general area, Trevor always has this look on his face and seems annoyed and agitated in general. He always assumed Trevor was salty about our relationship together. Apparently, it's common gossip around the workplace that Trevor was jealous of what Burke and I had. Burke also told me that he's kind of glad this happened in a way, because part of him always worried that I had feelings for Trevor or was going to leave him for Trevor since Trevor is a bit closer to my age than he is. I messaged Trevor and told him that there was no decision to be made and that I love Burke and I'm getting married to him next month. Trevor left me on read and removed me from Facebook almost immediately afterwards. I've seen him out in public a few times here and there, but we never spoke. He wouldn't even look at me. After about a week or two had passed, he texted me and told me that he's sorry things had to come to this. He was almost 100% certain that I still had feelings for him and that this was going to have a different ending. He mentioned kicking himself in the back for leading me on in the past and missing out on his chance with me. He told me that if I changed my mind, I knew how to contact him, and I never replied. I feel closer to my fiancé more than ever, and we've both decided to try for a baby. I've been thinking of asking Burke about starting a family for a while now, but I wanted to wait until after the wedding so I wasn't trying to squeeze my pregnant belly into a wedding dress. Apparently, he was having the same thoughts as I was. I took my last BCP on Saturday, and we've both been really busy putting in some last-minute wedding plans and trying to make a baby. Thank you all for your help. A piece of me still feels hollow because I just lost my best friend of 5 years, and part of me wishes there was a different outcome, where I could have both my man and my bestie in my life, and things could go back to the way they used to be, but I know that's impossible, but I'll be okay in the end.